the questions, if I can find them. Alright, so this is for the 10-mark question. Okay, you get actually a fair bit of space to write this response. If we have a look, you've got just probably a little bit over 2 pages to this. Again, some of you are not being careful enough with how much you're writing and trying to write small and neatly within these lines so that you can get as much in as you possibly can. Alright, let's have a look at what the question's asking us to do. You've got to assess, so we've got to make a judgment. Italian and international contributions, so there's Italian and international, to conservation and reconstruction. Both of those need to be referred to specifically in Pompeii and Herculaneum. Again, we have to have examples from both and in the last 2 decades. So it's a massive, massive, massive task, and it was quite a challenging question. And no one, I don't think, in the class scored 10 out of 10 for this response. So let's have a look at sources F and G very briefly. We've got subject is skeletons, an extract written by Sarah Court, Communications Officer, Herculaneum Conservation Project. So we've got a straight example here that if you don't talk about the Herculaneum Conservation Project, you're in trouble. You'll be pleased to know that work is proceeding rapidly at this point on the skeletons. All human remains found in the arches along the ancient shoreline have now been cleaned up, studied, documented and removed by anthropologists. During this process, copies were made, one of which you'll see in the Naples Museum. These copies will soon be installed in the arches for the public to view, while the original skeletal material is housed in appropriate storage facilities. So there's plenty for you to talk about in terms of actual examples of what people do to conserve the sites. Meanwhile, there is a much more ambitious project that has been approved for the whole ancient shoreline area, a collaboration between the Herculaneum Conservation Project and Fiore's Special Commission. The entire shoreline will be drained and then reinstated back to the original AD 79 level so that visitors can walk along the whole area and see the skeleton display. Okay, so that's reconstruction. So we've got a great example of conservation and reconstruction. If you don't separate the two out, you can't get the marks. It's quite simple. We've got some restoration work in progress at the site of the Beauchets in Herculaneum. We can see here pictures depicting what the arches actually looked like. So this is an example of restoration without destroying the site. Okay, so and you've got some examples of scaffolding here that's used to try and preserve the site and conserve the site as well. Right, so there's lots of examples that you could draw from for this response. Okay, we'll have a look at the example. All right. Since the last 2 decades, Italian and international contributions to conservation and reconstruction have been of profound significance to Pompeii and Herculaneum. So straight away we have a judgment. For instance, the Herculaneum Conservation Project has pioneered a range of extensive procedures that have effectively conserved Herculaneum without hindering reconstruction. These include emergency and preventative conservation. Now that's from the own knowledge, that's not from the sources. For example, emergency conservation such as erecting roofing over fading frescoes has allowed for continued conservation of the artifacts. Moreover, as insinuated in source F, specific reference there, so we've had all our own knowledge up here and now we've got specific reference. The project is moving rapidly to greater conserve the human remains of the site. This has been profound in allowing for both conservation and reconstruction to happen as bodies are being preserved and studied at the same time. For instance, skeletal remains are being kept in appropriate storage facilities. Again, that's from source F. Source F. Moreover, as seen in source G, restoration work is being undertaken in Herculaneum to enhance our understanding of boat sheds and beachfronts of the city. These have been profound in enabling archaeologists to collaborate with a multidisciplinary team of experts to greater reconstruct and conserve both sites. Such collaboration is also focused on the Pompeian Forum project. So again, here's some examples of recent last 2 decade projects to try and preserve and conserve the sites. And the House of Pompeii project aimed to reconstruct the building in Pompeii. Wallace Hadrill comments that the projects are significant as they allow reconstruction to happen without damaging the artifacts. So we've got again our own source. For instance, Palestra Capitolaneum building of Eumachia are being analysed to ensure greater conservation. Such effectiveness can also be seen when examining the Anglo-American project. So we've got another example of another project that's an international one. So we've got some international ones and some Italian efforts as well. This international contribution has been remarkable in reconstructing the House of the Vestals and the House of the Surgeon, whilst pertaining to the conservation methods necessary for the site. For example, stratigraphic excavations have been effective in reconstructing the port of Pompeii without hindering its conservation. Additionally, Italian contributions have also been effective. For example, Neapolis, so we've got a specific Italian contribution, alongside with the Central Institute for Catalan, have implemented an extensive documentation process that aims to better reconstruct the frescoes and mosaics at the site. The Italian government has also increased funding and raised awareness for conservation, so this is all specifically Italian. For example, it has preserved half the Via della Abbondanza from tourism to greater conserve the site. This has since proven to be an effective aid. Moreover, Italian archaeological experts such as Dr. Fabian Kahn, so got another specific example of an Italian archaeologist, have begun creating replicas of remains to reconstruct the past, also conserve the original remains. This has been remarkably significant to the conservation and reconstruction of the site. Italian experts are also, can't read that, something such as something in the House of the Faun, the reconstruction of the cultural life of individuals in Pompeii. These have been effective. Hence, it is evident that in the last 2 decades, both international and Italian contributions have been remarkably significant to conserve and reconstruct both Pompeii and Herculaneum. So if we have a look at the marker's comment, it's a good response, relevant examples and clear use of the source. You're a little vague on the actual conservation. Reconstruction done by Italian and international teams. But what you need to do is you need to be specific. What exactly are they doing to conserve the site? So this was saying that it's happening, but wasn't being quite as specific as it could have been to explain what was actually happening with that. What did that mean? Okay, if we go back to the source book, we'll have a look at the marking guidelines and see what they said for this question. All right, so to get in that 9 and 10 band range, it needed to make a clear judgment, so you need to be saying how much this is impacted. We need to talk about Italian and international contributions, so to conservation and reconstruction in Pompeii and Herculaneum in the last 2 decades. So it's very specific. You must do all that to get in here. Demonstrates a comprehensive knowledge of the extent of Italian and international contributions to conserve and reconstruct in Pompeii and Herculaneum in the last 2 decades. Okay, so you must make a judgment about it, you must have comprehensive knowledge about it, and you must integrate information from sources F and G and own knowledge and use appropriate historical terms and concepts. So what that means is you can't just talk about the sources in one section and then use your own knowledge. You must answer the source how you would answer it and use the sources to support what you're saying. Okay, use the sources as examples to support whatever structure you put in place to answer that question. And you can see down here, if you don't integrate the source, it's just here, uses information from the source. Okay, and makes a judgment and demonstrates a knowledge, but not in a whole heap of detail. Okay, and as the further we go down here, we end up with some of Italian and international contributions. So it's really pulling back what you have to do. But to get in this top band range, must have a clear judgment, must be Italian and international, must be Pompeii and Herculaneum, must be conservation and reconstruction. I hope that helps.